This should be made for me. A vampire Yuri anime written by Mamoru Oshii, comparable to Urusei Yatsura, great character designs, and a left-field blend of visual styles. That's everything I could ever ask for, all in one place. If only. No, in reality, Vlad Love fails to deliver on any of its promises, twice over that of its near supergroup level staff. It's stale, repetitive, toothless, and above all else, fucking boring. I do everything in my power not to be a hater, but I truly think this is one of the most loathsome pieces of shit I've ever bore witness to. God, where do I even begin? I guess I should give you the context I had in the run-up to its airing, otherwise it's just gonna look like I'm punching down here. This thing made a hell of a first impression. More than 30 years after his last TV anime, the ridiculously acclaimed Mamoru Oshii announces he's penning a new series to be directed by Junji Nishimura of Ranma 1/2 fame, with music by Kenji Kawai. In this announcement, he says he wants to seriously tackle a story centering on a girl meets girl concept, and describes central character vampire girl Mai as similar to Urusei Yatsura's Lum. As expected, COVID delays the series from 2020 to 2021, and it eventually airs to crickets. Seeing how little press it got to begin with, matched with its unceremonious release, made me want to champion the poor thing. Of course I did. How many vampire Yuri anime can you even name? How many Yuri anime can you name? These questions are rhetorical, obviously. Don't answer those. I assure you I already know most of them. Though he's not the household name Miyazaki is, Mamoru Oshii is nearly as important to the rise of anime in the West, even more so in his home country. Ghost in the Shell, Pat Labor, Angel's Egg, and motherfucking Urusei Yatsura. This is one of those series that's managed to narrowly evade a proper localization up through this day, despite low-key revolutionizing anime culture in early 80s Japan. That is unto itself such a big topic that it's gonna have to be its own video at some point. Rumiko Takahashi's animated cast of beautiful women and offbeat comedy left a massive impact on the generation of otaku that watched it in its prime, but the idiosyncratic voice Oshii and company gave it in adaptation is what makes it such an enduring classic to this day. There's a reason that despite the lack of a substantial localization and its absence on streaming platforms, Lum has become the poster girl for the vintage anime babe aesthetic. She was in her time, too. There's a reason noted power pop cute boy Matthew Sweet had a tattoo of her as far back as the mid-90s. I really have to stress the idiosyncratic part, too. When it wanted to, Urusei Yatsura got fucking weird. And not just in the lol so random way either. I mean... Take this episode, where protagonist Ataru's mom has a break with reality because the dull routine of a housewife becomes too unbearable. It's like barely a comedy for this episode. Instead, it's full to bursting with layered, obtuse dream logic, stream of consciousness, cultural critique, subversive character introspection, and sudden ruminations on post-war military fetishism. This episode alone is the Rosetta Stone for Oshii's signature style. Like any artist with a strong artistic voice, this guy's got his preoccupations. Chiefly among them is the notion that there must be some greater symbolic, cosmic reason or justification for the atrocities in humanity's history that would otherwise have to be cast onto society itself, and the struggle and reconciling with just what that meaning is. It runs very parallel to his relationship to faith. Oshii was a Christian until around the time Angel's Egg was in development, and you can really feel the aimlessness he must have been experiencing in the wake of his break from religion in that film. Mamoru Oshii's a really interesting guy, one who's certainly not afraid to be outspoken. Yeah, so remember what I said about him being as significant over here as Miyazaki in the pre-Disney Ghibli days? In a 1995 interview, Oshii went fucking beast mode on Ghibli, and it's one of the most insane things I've ever read. Takahata looks like a warm guy, but once something happens, he totally changes. It's like he gets a totally different personality. When he denies someone, he denies everything about that person, including their personality. I think of him as the Stalinist. Mia-san is a bit like a Trotskyist, but for me, they're both men of very intimidating tendencies. Especially, it's really something when they intimidate the young staff members. It's totally different from their everyday smiling nature. There are things that only Ghibli can do, and if it disappears, the tradition would disappear. But that's a relative value, and as for an individual value, I think they should be disbanded immediately. I think for creative work, anarchy is at least better than freedom under a state power. Porco Rosso. In short, it's a personal story. Porco put on such airs and spoke such flashy lines, posing as a pirate, but that's all self-excusing. I think it would have been good if the ending was such that he took off the pig's head and Mia-san's face showed up underneath it, saying, "I'm sorry." I think it would have been a fine film if the hero was a pig who could only say oink oink but was still very good at air battles. That Porco Rosso quote alone gives the guy infinite cred in my book. And while Urusei Yatsura at peak self-indulgence is grounded by the strength of its core cast, late career Oshii works come off like the unhinged ramblings of an insane man. Like, have y'all seen Garm Wars? I did, and I still don't know exactly what a Garm is or what wars it caused. Be this as it may, I was still excited by what Oshii had teased about Vlad love. After all, it's so unprecedented off the back of his weirdo isekai video game war movie extended universe shit. After 30 years, it was time to see what the guy could bring to television anime once more. Which of course leads us to the anime itself. Following a fucking phenomenal opening sequence rich with color and energy, Vlad Love presents itself as the story of Mitsugu Bamba, a young woman who really likes getting her blood drawn. How perfect then that she finds herself living with the mysterious Mai of Vlad Transylvania. She's a vampire and she's hungry. Thankfully, modern technology being what it is, Mai doesn't have to drink directly from any necks. Cold-stored IV bags are all she needs. Here lies Vlad Love's most interesting twist on the vampire mythos. Blood has types, right? A, AB, B, etc. I'm sure you know this, but in Japan, blood type is associated with personality types. For Mai, the type of blood she drinks temporarily alters her mood. It's just like Pointy's Point. Everybody loves Pointy's Point. Because of this, Mitsugu must reckon with the fact that depending on how she navigates getting Mai's blood fixated in secret, she opens herself to an opportunity to manipulate Mai's mood to her liking, to get her to like her more. She enlists school nurse Chihiro Chimatsuri. Do you get it? Her first and last name are spelled with kanji for blood. Vlad sounds like blood in Japanese. Mitsugu's got a blood fetish. It's all very clever. To help get a hold of enough blood for Mai. These three women have promising chemistry, the hapless Mitsugu trying to understand Mai, all the while being antagonized by Chihiro. They have fucking great designs, too. Mitsugu's got a lot of fun asymmetry in her outfit and her anemic eye bags, bitch, me too. Chihiro refreshingly stands out against other middle-aged anime women with her gaunt, angular face, and look, I'll fucking say it, her saggy tits. She's sincerely milfy. God, I'm sorry, I don't know why MILFs are such a recurring theme for this channel. I can't say enough good things about Mai's design in particular, though. Her situational Morrigan bat wings cropping up with her sudden bursts of energy is super cute, and I'll always love blonde bitches in fancy black dresses. The first two episodes, though weirder than I was expecting, present a 12-episode series with an exciting premise, fun primary characters, reverence for classic cinema, and the promise of a blossoming relationship between two women with a bit of dimensionality under the hood. That's where it ends, though, because nothing develops past this, which means Mai never gets to be her own character. Her mystery is alluring in the first few episodes. At first I was searching for truths about her character that may lie beneath her shifting personalities, but when episode 8 rolled around and I still felt like I didn't know a single thing about her, I stopped holding my breath that we were gonna get anything satisfying. This thing isn't even a good version of the hapless dude winds up with an impossibly hot girl living with him genre either, because in addition to Mai not having a character, she has zero chemistry with Mitsugu. Mitsugu. This proves the definitively for lesbians Bechdel test is just a loose framework. While it passes with flying colors, Mai has fewer speaking lines than the fucking gag jock guy. Oshii promised the series wouldn't have any Ike men getting in the way of the romance, and yeah, that's true. But the meathead dude trying and failing to steal Mai away for himself transcends running gag to become, oh my god, this is actually the fucking plot of the episode again, so quickly and with such totality that I think an Ikemen would have been a more interesting dimension. To be fair, Mai gets some interiority in the final episode, but it's all in flashback with her passed out. Personally, I don't think backstory is a substitute for personality, so it's too little too late. The rest of the cast just sucks too. They're all nothing burgers, no more than paper-thin, one-dimensional gimmicks that all somehow get more lines than Mai. One of them is a cosplayer, one's an aspiring director. There's always more of them than I think. Vlad Love really proves, as if it needed proving, that Rumiko Takahashi's character writing is the pasta with which Oshii and company laid their sauce upon. And man, that sauce could be rich. When you watch enough anime from around the 80s and 90s, you start to notice a persistent fixation with military technology, throughout the action and sci-fi genres in particular, but kind of all over. Hell, you especially see it in Miyazaki's works. There's a very complicated cultural relationship Japanese creators have with military tech, but the main thing you need to know is this. Everyone making anime in the 80s and 90s were anime otaku themselves, having been raised on anime from the generation prior, and many of those dudes were also military otaku, albeit to a lesser extent. Given that World War II is still recent history, and especially was for those making art in the 80s and further back, it's a lot to unpack. It's something the second Urusei Yatsura film takes a stab at unpacking, in part and with equal parts comedy and empathy. On its face, it's pretty alarming to see the cast establish a cosplay cafe centered around World War II, complete with all the Axis powers paraphernalia you'd expect, and for that to be depicted so casually. Under the hood, though, it cuts through to the heart of this subcultural obsession with tanks, fighter jets, and all manner of other weaponry with a single question, one it expects you to hopefully ask in response to such over-the-top imagery. Why would these boys feel so drawn to the technology and weaponry that ravaged their home country and was used to ravage others? You can try to separate the tech from the context, but the former was only brought about by the latter, and that requires reconciliation. But look at how sick all this shit is, though. Look at that one. That's a P69 buttfucker A300T. It's got 9,000 cylinders for maximum torque. This is the revision where they put a bunch of ball bearings in the undercarriage to weigh down the backside so the nose cone can be 1 millimeter thicker. What a marvel of engineering. I'm about to come! I'm not kidding. This show, this quirky vampire romantic comedy, manages to drool all over military tech any chance it gets. How does it keep finding new ways to do that? Look, all that aside, Vlad Love's biggest problem, the thing that damns it beyond all else, is that it's not fucking funny. Going in, I wasn't expecting something that was entirely a comedy, but I extra wasn't expecting something that failed so hard at every turn to make me laugh. Let me break down the 3 kinds of jokes in Vlad Love. Every joke is at least one of them, but most are 2 at once. First, we got the one-note running gag. Here's an example. Every episode, once per episode, Chihiro mistakenly calls Mitsugu Bam Bam. Her last name is Bamba. There are others, but I'm not even kidding, they're all so forgettable that even though they appear constantly, I don't remember any of them. The second is, stretch out something that's barely a joke in the first place until the joke becomes how long and unfunny the original joke was. It's fucking chopped and screwed anti-humor, but this is not an Andy Kaufman routine. Lastly, and most damningly, are the fucking references. Vlad Love is on some straight-up nostalgia-critic Family Guy shit. This thing name drops Darkstalkers, Yataman, the 40s Jekyll and Hyde film, The Exorcist, Fallout 4, The Gokei, Castlevania, Japanese socialist leaders, Francois Truffaut, and yes, Interview with a Vampire. I shit you not, I keep forgetting this is even an anime about a vampire sometimes. It's clear that this is all stuff Oshii really likes, and if the show was better, I'd probably think it was charming how much it paints an inspirational roadmap for itself, but I don't see the inspiration present in its DNA. It just constantly goes, yeah, here's this thing I like, and this thing I like. You know this thing, right? There's no fucking substance to any of it. Vladlov is the equivalent to a dude with K-Record stickers all over his guitar sitting down to play Ed Sheeran covers at an open mic. The worst part is, while it's doing all this referencing, it cuts itself off by clowning on itself like it knows it's being self-indulgent, but in the process of acknowledging its self-indulgence, it becomes even more self-conscious and self-indulgent as a result. It goes like this. Ah, bam bam, this situation is just like the 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. My name is Bomba. See, the film stars a roguish young man who tricks his uptight friend and girlfriend into skipping class with him. The trio are chased by a vindictive high school principal as they have the most fun they can with a stolen car in the big city. Hey, that sounds a lot like Lupin the Third to me. Yeah, Ferris is Lupin, Cameron is Goemon, Sloane is Fujiko, Rooney is Zenigata. No, it's completely different. See, John Hughes hey, what does any of this have to do with the robot that's terrorizing town? See, it's fucking unconfident, but it really wants you to get the reference. It recognizes that this shit is lame, but it still does it, but like with a wink on the end. Like, yes, Vladlov, I got the reference, I know about the 1973 movie Day for Night, thanks. You didn't have to explain it, and you definitely didn't have to shoehorn a Gone with the Wind reference into the last episode and in the process canonize that Mai's cheery little dad was once a slave owner in the American South. Oshii claimed this anime, his return to TV anime, was the result of what happens when you piss off an old man, that modern anime is neat and tidy and can be watched by everyone, that it's bland and harmless. But what does he see lacking from anime today that he thought to put into Vladlov? The anime doesn't exactly push any envelopes, it doesn't say anything especially controversial, there's no transgression, but he clearly thinks it's breaking some new ground. Was what he felt was missing a reverence for the old? How does he combat that if so? By reinforcing an artistic hegemony of fellow old men? What could have been a victory lap, a lighthearted celebration of Oshii's life work, of his most famous work, became instead no more than a sad birthday party, one where Oshii makes his friends watch with unblinking attention as he slowly opens his each and every present, where he knows his friends know he's being deliberately slow, so he turns it into a bit, going ever slower just to tease out the absurdity of the scenario, when the absurdity was made abundantly clearer prior. One where he insists on eating the first slice of cake in its entirety before anybody else can have theirs. One where he will not let any of his friends play with any of his new toys, but one where he will play with them all, new and old, leaving his friends to sit at the sidelines until their parents show up to take them home, goodie bagless. Hello, it's time for my product review. I'm reviewing this Monster Energy Ultra Rosa flavor. I don't know what flavor this is. It says pink lemonade, blush wine, guavas, grapefruit. I have no idea. But I'll disclose that I've had one of these already, and I enjoyed it, which I guess defeats the purpose of a product review, but here we are anyway. It's pretty good. Vladlov billed itself as a vampire girl meets girl story, right? For all its trite references to classic media, including horror media, there's an obvious lack of understanding or care given to the larger body of work that is the lesbian vampire movie. There's a nearly codified filmic language here unto itself. I made a game once off the back of that language. I've seen a good chunk of these films. Yeah, that's right, it's once again time for my weird thing for 70s exploitation film to spill over into an internet video about anime, because there are still more vectors through which Vladlov is a waste of potential. It all starts in 1872 with Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla. Depending on how you slice it, it's the third major piece of vampire fiction, predating even Dracula by a full quarter century. For the uninformed, Carmilla's lesbian undertones are just overtones. It's the story of a young woman who befriends the mysterious titular Carmilla, who is revealed to be a vampire and is feeding on the protagonist in secret. This story places the legacy of the feminine vampire firmly in line with that of gay fiction. Of course, it sounds complicated. Carmilla is a villain. Her attraction to protagonist Laura could be hand-waved as pure matter of carnality. She does subsist off blood, after all. There's a kind of possession that fuels the relationship, one that feels undeniably lustful when you take into consideration that when Carmilla bites, she goes for the tit. But of course, you also have to take into consideration the simple fact that Carmilla is significant for having lesbians in it at all. There's a lot to contend with. Good rep, bad rep. Look, I'm no bitch, I'll say it either way. It's pretty hot. Like, it's no secret that it's literally so easy to make a vampire sexy. Just show us a close-up of sharp teeth covered in blood and we're good. Heterosexual women the world over have been catered to in this regard. The idea of a beautiful, eternally youthful man making you his, so why not a beautiful, eternally youthful woman making you hers? Urusei Yatsura was ostensibly a sex comedy for its time, so I can't help but ask, why wasn't Vlad Love hornier? It wouldn't have saved it, and I don't know that I'd trust whatever Vlad Love's brand of horny would look like cranked higher, but it'd at least lend some credence to the series being in touch with its roots. Being a lesbian, there are times where you have to reconcile with the reality that much of the media out there that depicts your kind of love is made without you in mind. For me, anyway, looking at 70s genre cinema is just kind of charming in this regard now. We're talking 50 years of difference from films made for grindhouse theaters. These are just quaint to me. Moreover, a fuck ton of fun. The 70s were the undisputed champion decade for vampire lesbian exploitation films. I'm not kidding. 70s genre cinema is my bread and butter. If there's anything I'm qualified to talk about, it's the ins and outs of this smeary makeup, bright watery blooded, unabashedly horny, ultimately untangle-worthy genre.
Pulling her gently towards him, he showered her sweet upturned face with manly kisses. This is a silly book.
Pretty much every one of these films takes its inspiration from Carmilla. The biggest distinguishing factor is how much of a reaction a given film is to second wave feminism. No, really, hear me out. What I mean is, there are two camps here. Those where the vampire steals the girl away from her newlywed husband, and those where that doesn't happen. That's a dimension you can tell came straight out of that aforementioned response to 70s feminism. Because it didn't exist in Carmilla. No, Laura lived in an estate with her father. In these films, you see the directors coming to grips with the changing role of the man in society, the threat that they may grow to be unneeded by the women in their life when their tangible utility becomes just as present in women. This anxiety is of course chased with an equal dose of exploitation cinema sleaze. It's equal parts scary and exciting to watch these vampire bitches be so seductive and powerful that not even your women are safe from their allure. It's worth noting though, just because these films represent anxiety about male disempowerment doesn't mean they're about female empowerment. Of course male and female empowerment shouldn't be mutually exclusive. Rather, there's a vector through which they can be subtextually reassembled to speak to truths or fantasies women have about their relationships with other women. The Vampire Lovers sticks closest to Carmilla, as is the Hammer film's way, and deep voice, clumpy mascara, push-up bra legend Ingrid Pitt does great in the vampiric role. It's also got an incredible cat named Gustav. I audibly gasped when I saw that guy the first time I watched this movie. Vampires Lesbos is 100% the most softcore porny of these films, but even still, I think it's slipped its way into being one of the more low-key influential of these 70s sexploitation films. I think the greatest point of influence from this film no doubt stems from the mesmerizing, commanding force that was Soledad Miranda. Her resolute expressions, her makeup, and all the black lace in her costuming, it's a fucking tragedy she isn't considered one of the great iconic femme fatales. This was no doubt because her career stayed fairly strictly in what critics and filmmakers alike still disappointingly think of as lowbrow cinema. Vampiros Lesbos gave us the most dimension to its Carmilla-like, with this countess having a proper history to her that clearly afflicts her present-day self. Probably the best of the bunch though, or at least the most in line with proper art house aesthetics, is Daughters of Darkness. This movie is so fucking loaded with imagery, theme, and camp aesthetics, I don't even know how to talk about it. It is peak comphet hysteria cinema. The soundtrack is this delirious Scooby-Doo jazz funk. The setting is eerie and gorgeous. There's a scene where two characters completely unprompted get all hot and bothered talking about the murders committed by Countess Elizabeth Bathory. If that sounds like your kind of movie, check it out. Great stuff. Though brief, that rundown of my top 3 are a solid sample platter, and I think they really illustrate just how much can be done with the framework Carmilla laid down. This is why it's so frustrating that Vlad Love completely squanders its premise. Instead, it's no more than just, shit. I almost forgot. Vlad Love's art style is kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it? Real-life drone footage of a cityscape here, puppets in place of chibis, a very brief shot of a prop sign they filmed, the weird vignetting, yes, the gun. I like the absence of cohesion, but it's not even inconsistent often enough to be consistently inconsistent, nor is it consistently inconsistent enough to be inconsistently consistent. You know that Coltrane album where he doesn't let any of his session musicians listen to what any of the other musicians were playing while they soloed? Never mind. Some may speculate then that this must have just been the byproduct of the massive wrench COVID put into the production pipeline, but oh, you spring chicken, you Christmas hen, you. See, Vlad Love was funded by the new anime division of Ichigo Inc., a sustainable infrastructure company? Okay. And by all accounts, the structure of its anime division was built around restructuring the pipeline for more ethical work, which, if true, lends some real credence to what Oshii said about Ghibli back in '95. Even if we assume the anime was impacted by COVID anyway, here's the kicker. It was based on a 2013 iOS visual novel, Chimamire My Love, also written by Oshii. And I mean directly based off of it. It's all there, problems and all. That visual novel, by the way, stars a nameless male protagonist, so no fucking wonder the Yuri elements in the series are actually completely non-existent. What baffles me most about this is that director Junji Nishimura has worked on other Yuri anime. Yeah, in 2006, Nishimura directed Simoon, a Yuri anime that received acclaim from Yuri-Con's Erica Friedman. Where did the sincere approach to lesbian relationships go when Vlad Love came around?
Oh my god! It's not shit!
Like, I'm not fucking joking, dog. Your bog standard idol game does a better job gay baiting its audience. I wish Vlad Love had gay baited me. But no, Mitsugu and Mai literally don't have a relationship. After the first episode, Mitsugu barely even shows any feelings for Mai. I want to reiterate, the slapstick weightlifting club guy makes a more convincing case for romancing Mai than the show's own protagonist. This shit is why those amazing intro sequences just started to piss me off at a certain point. Like, how dare you try to front like you've got something to say? All this is to me is a cruel reminder that this series could have been something special, or at least something campy and pretentious and fun in that regard. By the time Mai talks about preferring the blood of aggressive men to that of women, you have no fucking idea how much of it to even take seriously. Is it a joke? Is it just an aside about how personality types affect the taste of blood that's removed from the romance? Presumably, because the series just completely forgets about it. But if you do take it seriously, it's like, are we supposed to continue picking up on this idea that Mitsugu is using Mai to fulfill some kind of fantasy? The one single read I pretty much only started seeking out because there wasn't an ounce of substance elsewhere. If I'm right, if that's the series telling us, nah, actually, Mai's straight and Mitsugu's pining for nothing, is this really what Oshi's serious attempt at tackling a girl meets girl story looks like? Nice. Nice one, you old fuck. Man, I'm sick of being so negative. Yeah, fuck this. I want to talk about something fun instead.
みんなのアイドル可愛いリリスちゃんですそれを守る戦士様だからですは申し遅れました私の名はクイルと申します
あれが努力かね
Now this is camp. In many regards, Yamibo is Vladlove for an infinitely better, infinitely weirder, infinitely more fun inverse universe. Chadlove, if you will. See, this anime is a visual novel adaptation that originally had a male protagonist, although in this case it's an adaptation of an eroge. Like Vladlove, the character designs are great, although they're even better in this series. It's got these sudden, unprecedented, baffling stylistic decisions like the digital shaky cam in the first opening minutes of the first episode. No vampires exactly, but it's also a Yuri, but like an honest-to-God one. It's also fucking insane. If I thought talking about Daughters of Darkness was difficult, oh god. Alright, so Yamibo is about... Okay, actually, hold on. I want to go back to this bimbo witch's design. We need to talk about how good this shit is. Like, look at this. This is fucking peak. This is the peak. Big cyclops-eyed hat with the antennae longer than this bitch is tall. High-waisted micro-skirt with the garters breaking up her absolute territory. This girl can't sit down without giving it all away. Her hair and her cape are both past her skirt. And what's that? She's yet one more blonde in a frilly gothic-y outfit. Another Hazelwyn. If you think her outfit is busy, her name is Lilith, by the way. If you think her outfit is busy, the show itself is nigh on incomprehensible by comparison. Does not clearly establish its premise for several episodes, cuts away to entirely new arcs with zero fanfare and expects you to discern what's flashback and what's a new location, introduces major characters as late as 10 of 13 episodes deep, characters rapidly shift from mood to mood and motive to motive, runs the full gamut of melodramatic human emotion in rapid cycles. It puts the phrase along for the ride to the ultimate test. It's fucking glorious. If Vladlove is the anime equivalent to standing around waiting for two passengerless self-driving cars to collide with one another only for their brakes to kick in at the last second, Yamibo is watching a freight train full of glitter collide with a freight train full of vibrators. Oh, and you get punched in the throat right after the crash. If you are, for some reason, like me, enticed by the promise of a chaotic, decadent, campy, horny, confusing 13-episode series all slicked up in the artificial, awkward 2000s Studio Dean sheen, you're in for a treat. What's... a movie reference? maybe Yamibo and Vladlov aren't so different after all. And wait, I know that bitch! Alright, story. Okay, actually, we need to talk about Class S first. Through complicated sociological reasons, stemming as far back to the Edo period, young adult homosexuality in modern Japan is viewed as something temporary, a phase, especially in women. This is perfectly represented in the term Class S, which refers to a simultaneously specific and broad form of relationship between usually teenage girls in Japan. The S in Class S stands all at once for shoujo, sex, sister, and escape, as in skipping school. Though to some it may sound like a weird smattering of S words, if you're familiar with the state of lesbianism in Japanese media, something may have just clicked into place for you. Let's put a pin in that just for a second. In part because of the trivializing attitude toward relationships between school-age girls, shows of intimacy between these girls tends to dive well past what we in the West tend to think of as platonic. Take, for example, this Seiko Omori single art. Are they, But nah, from everything I've read and heard, that's standard fare. The assumption that intimacy between girls is always platonic, non-threatening to the established social order, has bled over into societal perceptions about adult women who are lesbians. A quote, real lesbian is a woman who has sex with other women, because anything less than that could just be a typical show of friendship. That must make it pretty hard to legitimize your love to others. While as a genre, Class S is pretty exclusive to shoujo manga, as a social trend, you can feel its influence all over Japanese art of every demographic. Okay, unpin that pin. You ever notice how many yuri manga either lean into the "our relationship is almost that of two sisters" aspect, or straight up make their lesbians sisters on technicality? Or how many take place at an all-girls school, or otherwise in a world that's seemingly devoid of men? Or how many of them hand-wave their romances as fully romantic just as they come to a close? Class S, baby. This exists outside of capital Y Yuri manga too. It's all over fictional female relationships once you notice it. The byproduct of this is that we get more gay subtext or flat-out gay representation this way, but we lesbians must also contend with all these implications about how we love other women, permeating even the most nourishing of gay pairings. Hopefully this illustrates how trivial lesbian romance feels in Vladlov, how none of the cast takes Mitsugu's vague occasional pining seriously, much less how Mai feels about the whole thing. More importantly though, it thankfully explains Yamibo. I've been belaboring explaining the plot because I really don't know how to efficiently summarize it, but here's what you should know going in, because the structure of the series doesn't make itself nearly as clear as it ought to until you're already floundering in the deep end. This is the story of a girl, Hazuki, whose one true love, Hatsumi, has vanished mysteriously. This leads Hazuki to a far-out cosmic library upkept by a capricious witch, Lilith, who ropes her into all manner of adventure in the library's many books in an attempt to reunite the duo. These books contain separate universes, many of which seem to feature their own incarnations of Hatsumi. We tend to spend an episode or two in each world, learning about their key characters alongside Hazuki and Lilith. It's like Live Alive, and yes, it is pronounced that way. Some of the characters from these worlds prove to be central, but others disappear from the narrative entirely after their stories are resolved. It sounds simple, but again, the series isn't nearly clear enough about any of this until you're like halfway through and you can start piecing together the recurring elements. Yeah, about that true love. Above all else, the S stands for sisters in this instance. But like adopted sisters, guys. And there's some plot stuff later on that reframes that as well. If I had written about this without knowing about the history of Class S, this aspect would have been far more difficult to write about. But thankfully, I think it really does contextualize what otherwise would raise some major red flags in some. Like, these bitches go to an all-girls school literally named Saint Feminines. The romance is absolutely framed within the legacy of Class S, but that somehow also doesn't diminish the emotional intensity of their relationship. As with all Class S media, it complicates the end product, but if you're the type to seek out camp gay art, you're gonna have an easy time reckoning with this. Also, Class S romance isn't even the only form of lesbianisms present. We've also got the bimbo-y, twirls hair, tee-hee kind, because this show is horny. I won't lie, I was really rooting for these two. But like, it's not horny nearly as often as you'd think, but when it gets horny, it gets like pretty horny in the most over-the-top hysterical ways, and often it's in or near the same breath as it's trying hard to convey something emotionally significant. So the horny shit just crashes through the window like, whoa, okay, peep her ass, I guess. All right. All while we're watching two one-off characters have a tearful goodbye or whatever. That cavernous dichotomy, if you're me, is the show's greatest asset. Yamibo is at all times firing darts out of a fucking machine gun at a dartboard the size of the Wheel of Fortune, forgoing trying to hit a bullseye and instead drawing out a picture of Jesus Christ with fat tits. And as you watch, you just go, yeah, Yamibo, that's evocative, but I don't know that it means anything, except, hold on now, you actually did hit something there, and hey, over there too. Because without spoiling anything too directly, the show winds up glossing over some pretty interesting concepts about what it's like to live in the wake of having been touched by someone who isn't there anymore, the double lives we lead and the masks we wear, the emotional difficulty of missing something you're not sure was ever there, and how unchecked adoration can lead to full-blown possessiveness. Like any true blue genre film, it leaves you to connect these dots in more interesting ways than it attempts to, but it does genuinely raise them in evocative ways. It won't sound like it, but I actually think one of the show's biggest strengths, where its lesbian themes are concerned, comes from its most contentious aspect: how genuinely ugly Hazuki's feelings about Hasumi can get. One more way in which this isn't good rep, yet one more way in which it's interesting rep. And at this point, I'm just as down for both. Hazuki has a near obsession toward Hatsumi, a singular fixation that transcends the importance of any other element in her life. Hatsumi is her life, but she doesn't even know if Hatsumi feels the same, or if she feels held captive. The way this torments her from the inside is, once more, glorious theatrical melodrama. And, you know, it actually reminds me of yet one more lesbian exploitation film from the 70s, one with a similar one-sided possessive slant to it. 1977's Prey, sometimes known as Alien Prey, where B-movie icon Sally Faulkner plays a vegetarian lesbian who raises chickens and may or may not have killed her lover's boyfriend. Also, there's a shape-shifting alien they dress up in drag, and also, the film was directed by the guy who directed the film that Five Nights at Freddy's 1 got its scream sound effect from. Also, there's a minutes-long slow-motion mud fight toward the end. Okay, back to Yamibo. Yamibo, for the most part, gets the pass on what it stumbles into saying about gay relationships between women simply by virtue of it being so beyond ridiculous about everything it depicts with such equal opportunity that I really don't think it's worth getting up in arms about. Trust me, the hetero romances are even more baffling. Which, look, I try really hard to wrap my head fully around the things I cover, but I'm drawing a complete and total blank about what any of the series is trying to say about anything. That's straight up a plus to me, but it also leaves me with the difficult role of having to discuss something I don't fully understand. And because nobody talks about this anime, like, I'm not joking, the first time I learned about Yamibo was my wife stumbling across a photo of a garage kit of Lilith. Because it's that obscure, there are barely even any other perspectives or interpretations to fill out my understanding of this thing. The eroge it's based on is still untranslated. I tried reading the manga, but only its first 3 chapters were scanlated, and those didn't help at all. Despite being so totally long forgotten, every time I researched Yamibo, I kept finding more and more weird shit that absolutely did not help my case. Like, there was a typing game designed to help you learn to type based on the anime adaptation of an eroge? Why? Why does this exist? Why can't I do one video without falling down a rabbit hole like this? What? Alright, I'm gonna stop myself there. I have no clue how I'm gonna get this video out on time. So yeah, probably don't watch Vlad Love. That anime fucking sucks. Probably don't watch any of those movies I talked about either. They're all kind of horrible and mean and gross. In fact, probably don't watch Yamibo. Maybe just like watch Jennifer's Yeah, you know what? Actually, yeah. If you want a lesbian-tinged genre film pastiche without any of the baggage exploitation films carry, but all of the baggage a film from 2009 starring Megan Fox carries, if vampire and succubus are synonymous enough for you to have a good time, watch Jennifer's Body. That movie fucking owns. Isn't that right, David Lynch?